So Outdoors Queensland respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the lands where we gather across Queensland and possibly beyond. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important roles Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples play regarding the land, sky and waterways used for outdoor activities. I'm in Brisbane or Meanjin on Yagara country, which is a place of the Jagera and Turrbal peoples. If you'd like to, you can drop in the chat the place and the country that you're joining from today. We also acknowledge funding provided by the Queensland Government, which supports outdoor activities across the state, including the funding that allows Outdoors Queensland to do our work on behalf of the sector. We also acknowledge the work that government departments and ministers do, and there's a few different government departments and ministers involved in outdoor activities. And that includes sport and recreation, who are within the Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport. Welcome to another session of Coffee and Conversation. My name is Dom Courtney, Executive Officer at Outdoors Queensland. Our Operations Manager, Mark Squires, is my co-host for today's session. Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everyone who's joining us. As I said before, we do make recordings of these sessions publicly available on our website and on YouTube. And this is our 8th scheduled episode of Coffee and Conversation for 2022. So welcome. Feel free if you'd like to, I think everyone has done, as renamed, but I just saw someone joined on the phone. But yeah, as I said, feel free to chime in as we go along, so and make yourself known to the group. Got a quick agenda for today's session there, about mostly opportunities and obviously a little bit about COVID-19, what is the COVID normal world. If you've got anything to add to the agenda during the meeting, speak up. If you've got any topics for discussion in future sessions, please contact Mark or myself. Well, I just put a photo on there today. I attended on Saturday the ATHRA, the Australian Trail Horse Riders Association. It was their 50th anniversary event at the Queensland State Equestrian Centre at Caboolture. And I met Erwin and Monique, who are on an epic trip around Australia. They're about halfway. Erwin's riding with a pack horse, riding a horse with a pack horse, and Monique's organising logistics along the way. So they've set out from southwest WA. They travelled across the Nullarbor, and they're now heading up the east coast. And Monique described it as they're going to hang a left once they get to Townsville, head across the top to Broome, and then back down the west coast. And they're raising money for mental health and via Beyond Blue along the way. So it's a pretty amazing story. I think they've been on the road for about 2.5 years already, which is amazing. But a big thanks to ATHRA for inviting me to come along on Saturday night. It was a really good session, a really good evening of celebrating the world of horses, and included a show by Guy McLean, who is an amazing horse person, and he also has a trained bullock, as you do. So he had those there on Saturday. Moving right along, today is the final day of National Reconciliation Week, and the theme is Be Brave, Make Change. And Reconciliation Australia, they put it out there on their website that that theme, Be Brave, Make Change, is a challenge to all Australians to be brave and tackle the unfinished business of reconciliation so we can make change for the benefit of all Australians. So it's as I said, today's the last day of National Reconciliation Week, but there are still opportunities to participate in events for National Reconciliation Week. And even if you haven't done it previously, I think that theme of Be Brave, Make Change is especially relevant. So check it out and have a look at that in there. This is the first year that Outdoors Queensland has a reconciliation action plan. We got that endorsed in February. So obviously part of that reconciliation plan is what we do internally regarding reconciliation and what we can do with the industry. So we're proud to support National Reconciliation Week and promote it. I might just hand over to Mark now to speak about Great Getaways Queensland, which is one of our programs which is supported by Health and Wellbeing Queensland and the Queensland Government. Mark, do you want to have a quick chat about what's coming up?
Yep, sure, no problem. Yeah, morning, folks. Yeah, so Great Getaways Queensland, we are heading into, or the rest of 2022 with a lot of enthusiasm. Our first weekend program for this year is happening in about 2 weeks' time on June 17 to 19 at the PCYC camp at Bornhofen in the Numbamba Valley. There are still places available, and whilst it might not be appropriate for any of you on the call this morning, you possibly have friends or family that might enjoy a weekend up in the valley. So please do pass on the message. I'll share the link for that program in a few minutes. The other thing we're getting into as well for the rest of this year are activity days. So rather than committing to a full weekend of Great Getaways, we're looking at a day or half day of activity. And we've already got 4 paddling days booked in at Shorncliffe in the I forget the name of the waterways just right now, but never mind. We are looking for suitable providers for day activities, particularly in the southeast corner, but also anywhere else in the state, really. So if you have an activity that you'd like to offer up, then we'd definitely like to talk to you about that. And I think, Sam, I've already mentioned to you at some point in the past, and I'll be keen to talk to you about that again at some point soon. Next week, I'm heading up north, visiting a number of camps in the Rockhampton, Mackay area, looking for venues for the weekends for later on the year and into 23. And then towards the end of the month, I'll be going even further north, Cairns and Townsville area, and up on the Tablelands, doing the same sort of trip, looking at venues and potential venues for weekends. And lastly, we have a new website coming. In about a few weeks' time, you'll hear the news that Great Getaways has its own dedicated standalone website. So we're quite excited about it coming to you as well. Any questions about Great Getaways, feel free to get back to me either in the chat today or later on, and I'll tell you all about it. Okay, thanks, Dom.
Thanks, Mark. And a big thank you to Mark for all the work that does go on in relation to Great Getaways. Mark's taken the lead on that for us and doing a great job with it. So thank you, mate. The other one that's coming up in April, we held an industry forum which was focused on trails recovery and reconstruction, which was post the flood events, particularly natural disasters. But on the 21st of June, we'll be running our second industry forum for this year, which is focused on the Australian Adventure Activity Standards and Good Practice Guides. So it'll be relevant for all organisations, whether it's a business or a club that conducts outdoor activities with dependent participants. If you want information on how to implement the Adventure Activity Standards in your processes and the Good Practice Guides, please feel free to join us. It'll be an online session for an hour. It's not going to go into all the details, but it's going to give, the intent is to give a good overview of how to implement the Adventure Activity Standards and Good Practice Guides and what it's all about. So feel free to join us. It's the 21st of June from 11 o'clock. So we hope we can have a few people join us for that session as we go along.
Dom, can I ask, was I couldn't get into the trail session. I think I was in the field. Was it recorded? Is it available on YouTube?
Good question. Mark?
Yes, David, I'll share a link in a moment. There is a page on our site about the forums, and there's a link there to the recording for that session. Yes. Yeah,
I think we had about 40, I was going to say 40 odd, but none of them were odd. Dave, of course, about 40 people join us, I think, and it was a good session. So yeah, it was a good discussion. So if I do say so myself, so the next one, as I said, 11th of June, 21st of June, and if you can join it, that'd be great. And Mark has just popped a link in the notes in the chat. Thank you, mate. A few opportunities coming up, a couple of surveys and feedback that people are seeking. So The first one is a survey relating to volunteering in Australia, and it'd be really good to see outdoor organisations really represented in this survey. One of the things it says in the information, so it's being run by Volunteering Australia, but Volunteering Queensland's also promoting it, I think, you know, and Sport and Rec are also promoting it. But one of the things they say on their website is if they get enough people from a particular sector fill out the survey, they can actually create infographics or information, provide reports for that sector about volunteering in that particular sector. So I think if we can get plenty of people from outdoor rec and sport, I suppose, as well, completing it, then we might be able to get some information back about the trends, possibly Australia-wide, maybe Queensland-wide. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. I haven't done it yet, but they say the survey says on the website, survey takes less than 20 minutes to complete. Obviously, we can see what it takes, and it closes on the 14th of June. So we've got less than 2 weeks before that one closes. So I just wanted to flag that one as well. And Mark's just shared that link. Thank you again, mate. The next one is the Skills IQ. They're currently doing an update of the sport, aquatic and recreation training package products, which is a part of the sport, fitness and recreation training package. So this process, they've got some websites that are available at the minute. And they also said, yeah, I attended a webinar yesterday, and they said they're going to do a webinar specifically for employers. So yesterday there was a mix of employers, peak bodies like myself, but also peak body reps, but also RTOs and others on there. So they said they're going to do a specific session on employers. I don't know if they've announced the date yet, but they'll be in the next couple of weeks. So even if you're not necessarily delivering or involved with the specific sport, aquatic and rec training package products, they're proposing some new units that'll go across the entire sport, fitness and recreation training package. So it is actually relevant for, you know, so you understand what those units are. Jeffrey from Scouts Australia and Joe from Active Queenslanders Industry Alliance are both on the committee that oversee the process, but they really are looking for feedback. Their webinars are a way of providing feedback, but you can also fill out online and put specific comments on either the qualifications or the units themselves. So it's worth checking out and probably worth attending a webinar if you need more info, or look at their website. And that one closes in 2 weeks on the 17th of June. So just wanted to flag that. Any questions or comments? I know I need to pause every now and again and just take a breath because it's so exciting. As far as the training package reviews is always scintillating, but it is important for, you know, the qualifications right across our sector. This is the last of my promoting of surveys, but the Gold Coast, City of Gold Coast, they're currently developing a plan for sport and physical activity for the next 10 years, so 2023 to 2033. They're seeking responses to a survey to help ensure that Gold Coast continues to evolve and support sport and active lifestyles. So that's what they've got on their website. I actually went to a workshop down at the Gold Coast a few weeks ago. The current plan is called the Gold Coast Sport Plan. It actually runs out next year, so they're looking to replace it, but it's described as a sport and physical activity plan, so which I think is a good step in relation to recognising that physical activity, which includes outdoor activities and fitness activities as well. So if you get a chance, and if you're interested in what's happening on the Gold Coast, please have a look at that survey, and obviously ensure that your responses put an emphasis on outdoor activities being prominent in their plan. Is always good for the community and for outdoor activities. All right. Any questions? I need to. No. Cool. Good old COVID. I want to spend a bit of time talking about the COVID protocols and what's happening in that space. There have been quite a few changes, obviously, and yeah, that I think last time we discussed this, that the health minister, the Queensland health minister, came out and said that the government is moving away from the situation where COVID protocols will be governed by public health directions and moving towards considering it as a workplace health and safety measure, which involves individual responsibility and responsibility from employers. So they're basically almost saying this is going to be like any other disease as we move forward. I think that's what the new normal is going to look like in time, but there are still some restrictions in place, but they're nowhere near as comprehensive as they were previously in relation to this. So I'll come to that. I just wanted to flag the back to school plan, the impacts on particularly outdoor education operators. We have put in a submission in late March to the Premier and the Minister for Education, seeking financial support for outdoor education operators in Queensland due to the disruption caused by the back to school plan that the Department of Education put out, or Queensland Government put out. We haven't had any luck so far. We're still pursuing it. The Department of Education has said no, that they can't provide targeted financial support to outdoor ed operators. We've sort of moved our approach onto the Minister for Small Business, and we're waiting for a response to that. So I don't have any news on it, but still will advise as soon as we do have any news. It's somewhat, I think that some of the difficulty is trying to make sure that the government understands the impact of all of this, and also partly about making sure that it's considered in the future. So if anyone has any questions on that, I just saw, Andrew, you popped in a question about Victorian operators under the Positive Start program. Yeah, I've spoken to some of the colleagues who are involved in that program, and that one's going to be, it's specifically aimed at schools that haven't been on camp in recent years. It's not just a direct compensation to operators for the disruptions. It's also about trying to embed school camp for schools that haven't been there before. So very much subsidising school camp for schools that wouldn't otherwise go on school camp. So it's a way of supporting the schools to go on camp as well as supporting the operators. It's an interesting program. Dave, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of hoops to jump through. Yeah. For instance, you've got to be accredited with, either Camps Association or the ATAP accreditation. Yeah. You've got to be a member participating in the Uploads project. So they've added quite not bad things. Yeah, they've added quite a few hoops though. For instance, an operator like myself, I'm not accredited. So yeah, and it's not for day trips. It was only for camps or journey, and it's more a future thing and for underprivileged kids to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the things that the government trying to broaden the scope of outdoor education, I think, is part of that. But yeah, it is I think the way they're trying to do that program, it's a significant investment, as Andrew said. Like there is a fair bit of money in it, but it's also about how it gets rolled out and how it actually ends up, what difference it makes, I think, is part of what they're focusing on in that program. Yeah, I've had a few conversations about it. It's an interesting way of doing it, but as you said, Dave, there are a few hoops to jump through for the schools and also for the operators, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's proving to be a stimulus package for the industry down there. We had a conference a couple of weeks ago with some of the other big operators, and it's also holiday camps. So, bottom line is that their sites are being booked up, and then they're getting an upfront payment non-refundable sort of deposit on that as well. So, you know, there was a conference of multiple. So you got Western Australia where, you know, a lot of their contracts were paid out. So significant support. Victorian sites now suggesting there's significant support for their recovery. New South Wales is pretty dire. But at least, I mean, that, you know, a couple of weeks ago, they announced $30,000 per operator or something, which for some of them is just a drop in the ocean, but at least it's something. But the bottom line is there's still no recognition or support for Queensland sites.
Yep. And, mate, as you know, that's part of what we have made a point. There's also been Queensland government support for other industries. And that's you know, sometimes it's, you know, it's one thing for us to say, well, other governments are supporting this sector, so you should do the same. But the other thing we can point to is there's Queensland government support for other sectors, and that's an important thing to be able to point to as well. So that's what we're trying to do. It's been, as I said, slow going and not a positive response to that so far, but doesn't mean we'll stop on that that process. So we'll keep pursuing it, but yeah, it seems to be a little bit slow at the moment. So I will keep on working on it, and we'll certainly advise when or if we get somewhere with it.
Don, is there a need to, again, I guess, maybe formulate more of a social media strategy towards this, perhaps through the OEAQ, which I'm a committee member, and you know, I'm more. I don't know. A more public campaign than just a request to the minister that can be ignored and is, you know, only known about within this group and within the inner circles.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've been trying to go through those processes and get somewhere with it. It could also be contacting MPs, ministers, you know, about this request and trying to make a difference that way. It's another option. As much support as we can give it. As far as, you know, a public campaign, it's another option. It's at that point of saying, well, you know, this is something that the request was made in March. You know, it is, you know, somewhat frustrating. I'm very, like, the Queensland government has been, you know, responsive to our requests in the past, particularly Queensland Health, when we've been asking to change the protocols and that sort of stuff that we had as we went through with the industry plans. You know, they certainly responded when we asked those questions, and Sport and Rec have been really helpful in pushing those through and getting the attention. It just, I think at the moment, seems to be another level that seems to be a more difficult one at the moment. So I'm happy to discuss different options and look at the way we do it. But yeah, at the moment, it's sort of in a bit of a holding pattern. So yeah. All right, moving along. I've sort of highlighted this every session for I don't know how long, but the new normal that was on the roadmap, those little drawings, but the whole physical distancing, mask wearing, hand hygiene, staying home when sick, which also applies to the flu at the moment, which seems to be quite prevalent. The Check in Queensland app, which has sort of moved off the radar a bit, but some venues are still using it. And then vaccination and testing, and we'll come to vaccination in a little while as well, specifically in relation to the outdoor education space. But yeah, that new normal is still an important, you know, group of protocols, I suppose. So just wanted to continue to flag those ones. So since our last session, which was in early May, there's been a few more changes. A lot of this stuff now seems to be sort of behind the scenes. It doesn't seem to be as like sweeping changes, but the government released this management of diagnosed cases of COVID-19 and close contacts direction in, I think it was the 3rd of May, and then they've released this one which superseded it. So they had this one, and then this is number 2 that's in at the moment, and it talks about the requirements for someone diagnosed with COVID or close contacts, and it doesn't make a lot of changes to the other ones, but they sort of made some tweaks. And this also talks about requirements, I think, when you have a positive diagnosis, but it specifically says in it that individuals or organisations can choose to adopt greater infection control measures. And this is the wording that I found interesting in this is it says, nothing in this direction prevents an employer, organisation or industry from implementing additional infection control measures through protocols, policies or local guidelines. So they are basically saying, I think, this is the bare minimum in relation to dealing with diagnosed cases and close contacts. But if organisations want to do more than this, they're basically saying that's up to the organisation and how you do it. So I just wanted to flag that it's there on the website. Mark's just shared the link, but they do specifically say, or you can do more. So I just wanted to mention that as well. The changes aren't dramatic. I think the previous session we went through what that had changed to in relation to if you're asymptomatic, you can go about your business if you've got wearing a mask and that sort of thing. So just wanted to flag that. Did anyone have any questions on that one or comments? Oh, okay. The next one is possibly going to take up a little bit more time. So Queensland has the COVID-19 vaccination requirements for workers in a high-risk setting direction number 2. And unfortunately, I almost know that wording off the top of my head. That's the one that imposes vaccination requirements for workers in high-risk settings, as it says on the label, I suppose. And it hasn't changed since the 4th of February this year. But the other health directions that were revoked on the 14th of April, there seems to be a change in how the vaccine mandate is being interpreted and what facilities are a high-risk setting according to Queensland Health. So the public health direction specifically includes outdoor ed facilities in the Schedule 2 of the direction, but it very much seems at the moment that workers at outdoor ed centres that aren't school facilities, that aren't attached to a school or aren't a school, aren't included in the list provided on this. So they're not included on the list that's provided on the Queensland Health webpage, which I've screenshot and put up there on the screen. So I'm aware of several outdoor operators whose operations include school camps who've been advised by Queensland Health that they are not considered to be a high-risk facility. So they're not subject to the requirements or restrictions in the public health direction. So we've actually sought clarification for Queensland Health about the meaning of outdoor ed facilities in their definition of that high-risk settings. But the important piece of this is whether your operation fits the classification does affect your legal obligations for your workers and for the organisation. So Queensland Health seems to be taking it as case by case and looking at what the activities and operations are of the organisation. So we'll certainly pass on the message once we get an answer from Queensland Health, but it's also something that you might want to get specific advice on. It's quite obvious for non-outdoor ed operators that you don't have that vaccine mandate. It's obvious for schools that the vaccine mandate's still in place. But outdoor ed facilities in general seem to be, which aren't part of a school, they see the private sort of operations and seem to be in a bit of a grey area at the moment. So I just wanted to flag that. But I've also put on the screen there that email address, the dlo@health.qld.gov.au. That is the email address that seems to cut through a little bit where you can actually seek this clarification, and it's they've used that one to reply. So if anyone wants to comment on that, I think it's worth having a think about if you want to approach Queensland Health directly and do it. I know of one operator he told me just this week that they did that and they got a response in a few days saying, yeah, no, we don't consider yours to be a high risk facility. They did have to, there's a bit of back and forward. They provided a link to their website so the person at Queensland Health could actually assess their venue, and they just looked at it online, I think, and checked it out and then got back to them with an answer. So yeah, it's a matter of getting in there. We've said, if you can give us some general advice, we can pass that on to the industry rather than them receiving requests from every single operator in the state. So I'm hoping they get back to us, but I'm not sure. But does anyone want to comment on that one? I know we've got a couple of schools on the line, and the vaccine mandate will obviously still continue, it appears, for schools. But does anyone else want to comment on that?
It seems what the stance Queensland Health is now taking is that private operators, the requirement for vaccination ceased with the revocation of the Public Health and Social Measures Direction on the 14th of April.
Yeah, that seems to be the take on it, which is interesting. And, we're now in now in June, we're talking about something that happened in April and still trying to work out the actual impact on it for the whole of our sector, or for the outdoor ed particularly. So we at the time of that revocation in April, we put it out there and said, look, this has happened, but we weren't aware that that was the way it was going to be interpreted in relation to outdoor ed facilities. So obviously, like, as an organisation, Outdoors Queensland, we still support vaccination as a way of managing or protecting individuals from COVID and the community as a whole. But if this requirement's no longer required for workers in that setting, then our operators need to know that. It affects the workforce, and it affects operations of various businesses, and is important to know. So we will keep following it up. But yeah, it does seem to be that the interpretation's changed a bit since April, and it's only just really coming to light. And Mark's just shared that email address in the chat there. Thanks, Mark, because yeah, it is an important one if you do need to chase it up. And if you want to contact me and have a chat about it, more than happy. And if you do get the news back from Queensland Health that, either way, happy to have a chat about that too. Let me know how you go if you do get, I guess, some feedback from them. That it's good to keep on top of what's going on in that space. So other COVID rules and protocols. The Education Queensland, this is particularly regarding school camps again. So Education Queensland's got its rules for state schools for attending camps and going on excursions. And their website has been updated again quite recently. It now says that all workers and volunteers attending an excursion or camp, including those held at Department of Education, Outdoor and Environmental Ed centres, must be vaccinated. So and that includes going on excursions, but you need to be vaccinated to be working at a school. So they're including volunteers in that. They do then go on to say, for excursions and camps at a non-departmental facility, it says off-site premises must adhere to current requirements outlined in Queensland's public health measures. So that's exactly what it says. So they're basically not putting extra requirements on non-government venues, non-Department of Education venues, on top of the Queensland Health requirements, the public health measures. They've also removed, there was a requirement for outdoor ed providers to comply with the COVID safe checklist for restricted businesses. they've removed that because those that requirement's been revoked by the Chief Health Officer as well. And I think that was again the one in April that Andrew was just referencing. Their rules still include a suggestion to schools that schools consider providing students and staff with rats to conduct at home before attending camps to reduce the risk of becoming ill while at the camp, which again seems like a good suggestion. They've got information about dealing with close contacts while at camp. And they've also got some information saying that it sort of defaults back to the Queensland Health directions and just says close contacts have to follow those Queensland Health directions. So they're not putting extra implications on there, but they do then say students who are not considered close contacts can continue attending the camp. So there is some clarity on that if you have, and this all applies for state schools particularly, and you know the state schools should know these rules, but I think it's also valuable for camp operators and people hosting excursions to understand these rules, of what the school should be following to help your clients out, I suppose. There's also, the government put out a statement about if you've had COVID and developed symptoms in the 12 weeks after you complete your isolation, you don't need to get tested for COVID and will not be considered a close contact. So again, it's worth knowing whether participants have had COVID or finished their isolation in the 12 weeks before they turn up, because the rules are actually different as far as whether they're considered close contacts. So it's just an extra piece of information that you might want to gather in relation to your participants. It's again, you know, particularly for excursions and school camps, you guys are good at, you know, gathering and keeping confidential medical information. So it's probably another question to think about including in that space, just another piece of information that you need to deal with and keep confidential and keep private. Any questions on all of that? I know it's a little bit, I'm trying not to make it complicated, but sometimes it is, and I'm trying to sort of work my way through and work out exactly what the rules are so I can communicate that. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Clear as mud, Dave, looks like. All right. The other one, which I touched on this earlier too, in that that public health direction, where specific land managers or clubs or landowners can have rules that are stricter than the restrictions that the Chief Health Officers put in place. And it could be about protecting vulnerable staff or vulnerable communities. It could be about reassuring participants that they're taking reasonable measures for protection of participants. Someone suggested to me that it could just be they don't understand that the rules have changed as well, which is possible. I think it's about understanding what the rules are and complying, particularly if an organisation is able to provide reasoning for those rules and, you know, justify that they're taking extra measures. So I guess it's a decision on whether you comply with those rules or go elsewhere, and it can be difficult. And I know there's people at the moment who are sort of challenging some of these spots and saying, well, why do we have to do that? I think it's just about understanding what rules are in place for some of these places and spaces where we like to undertake our activities, particularly in a group. So it's just about probably having a conversation about it. Questions, comments? We're ripping along. All right, got a few reminders there. Dave Maskell, did you want to speak about Inside the Outhouse and what's coming up, mate, or what's been going on in the outhouse?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. We're back again after, again, a calendar break of about 2 Mondays. This week, we're going to talk about resilience through outdoor education. So just sort of unpacking that in a general sense about is resilience something that's built and can be achieved through outdoor education. So Monday next week at 4:13 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and in your various localities. Jump on in.
Thanks, Dave. Resilience is always an interesting topic in that space. I think the whole industry's shown a fair bit of resilience in the last couple of years in the face of so much uncertainty and volatility. But yeah, it's certainly interesting to talk about it in context of the resilience building of participants, and I don't know, maybe also the leaders as well. Dave, is that on
well, it's resilience in a general sense. So resilience of outdoor education organisations, program design, perhaps as a result of COVID and flooding and climate change, and certainly where people see resilience within year level cohorts now compared to what they've done in the past, and maybe tricks and tools that could be shared amongst the group. So, yeah. Wide-ranging topic, 4:15 on Monday. I'll put the link in the chat.
Righto. Thanks, Dave. We've also got a little reminder there of resources, our websites and the e-bulletins, which one of them Mark put together and sent out this week. Thanks again to Mark, and also our social media channels. And I just put another reminder there about the Australian Adventure Activities Standard Forum on the 21st of June. Mark's just shared the link. Dave shared the link to the Inside the Outhouse, and Mark shared one for our website in general. But the other thing that has happened that I haven't even mentioned, and maybe that's because I've been too focused on, or you never be too focused on what's going on within the industry, but also you might have noticed there's been a federal election, and there's now a new federal ministers for education, but also there's a new federal minister for sport, and the federal minister for sport and aged care is actually a Queenslander, Annika Wells. So I'm hoping in my role as the president of the Outdoor Council of Australia to see if I can't line up a meeting sometime there. But we've also got Laurie from Outdoors New South Wales and OCT is looking to line up some meetings as well in relation to from the Outdoor Council point of view. So we'll keep everyone informed, but obviously with the change of government, there can also be change of policies, and we're sort of trying to ensure we can advocate for outdoor activities at the national level, and see what difference we can make there as far as increasing opportunities for people to participate in outdoor activities right across the country, and see how the federal government wants to be a part of that as well. So we know about all the benefits. We can tell them those pretty quickly, including the resilience benefits, but it's about getting the cut through sometimes, and making the effort to speak to the decision makers at that level. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments? Because I'm pretty much done. Otherwise, you get an early mark. We're pretty much done, as I said. Our next session is the new financial year. For those finance people out there, it'll be happy new financial year to you on the 1st of July. One of my sisters-in-law, who is an accountant, it's actually her birthday, so it makes it easy to remember her birthday on the 1st of July. So that'll be our next session. Unless anyone has anything else, and I'm looking around, no? We'll sign off now. Thank you very much for joining us. It's much appreciated. Mark, thanks again for co-hosting. I'd just like to say, look after yourselves, look after others, and look after the planet.